In the bustling capital of Earth, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement and anticipation. The grand auditorium, adorned with holographic displays of various celestial bodies, was filled with delegates from across the galaxy. Representatives from planets of every hue and size gathered, their chatter a blend of languages and dialects that echoed against the high ceilings. Among them stood Marisol, a young scientist with dark curls framing her determined face, her heart pounding in rhythm with the thrumming energy of the crowd. Marisol adjusted her glasses, taking a deep breath as she stepped up to the podium. She could feel the weight of their gazes upon her, the expectations high. Today, she would present her latest research on Earth's unique biosphere, a topic that had become increasingly vital as whispers of a growing threat circulated through the interstellar network. Earth had long been dubbed the Quiet Planet, a title that Marisol found both flattering and infuriating. While it was true that their natural beauty and serene landscapes were unparalleled, the silence surrounding Earth's defenses could not be ignored. "Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed delegates," she began, her voice steady as she projected confidence. "Today, I stand before you not just as a representative of Earth, but as a guardian of its future. Our planet is a living tapestry of ecosystems, each thread vital to the fabric of life. However, this tranquility faces unprecedented threats not just from within, but from the cosmos beyond." Her presentation unfolded, showcasing stunning visuals of Earth's biomes, lush rainforests, expansive oceans, and sprawling deserts. She spoke passionately about the delicate balance that sustained life on their planet, emphasizing the need for cooperation among the galactic community to protect this fragile ecosystem. As she spoke, she noticed the expressions of the delegates shift. Some leaned in, captivated by her words, while others exchanged skeptical glances. A tall delegate from Zorath, with skin like polished silver, raised a hand. "Dr. Marisol, while your research is commendable, we must remind you that Earth's reputation for peace has kept it safe. Surely, there is no imminent danger." Marisol felt a flare of frustration rising within her. "That is precisely the misconception we must address. Peace can be deceptive, and silence can be a harbinger of danger. We cannot afford to ignore the signs. I have evidence of cosmic anomalies that may pose a significant threat to our planet." The murmurs of disbelief rippled through the auditorium. A delegate from Solaris, known for their wisdom but often cautious nature, stood up. "You speak of threats, yet our systems indicate no unusual activity. Are you certain this is not merely a product of your imagination?" Marisol clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. "I am not merely imagining this. The data I have collected—" Before she could continue, a low hum resonated through the chamber, interrupting her. The lights flickered momentarily, and the delegates exchanged worried glances. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the air, and Marisol's heart raced as she realized the implications. This was no ordinary malfunction. Meanwhile, light years away, on the gritty surface of the war-torn planet Tarthan, a warlord named Korath surveyed the cosmos from his dimly lit war room. He was a towering figure, clad in dark armor that glinted ominously under the flickering lights of holographic displays. The walls were lined with maps and surveillance feeds, each detailing the movements of ships and resources throughout the galaxy. "Earth, the quiet planet," Korath mused, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "They believe their peace will protect them. But peace is a weakness I shall exploit." He turned to his advisors, a motley crew of mercenaries and strategists. "Prepare the surveillance fleet. I want every corner of that planet monitored. They will not see me coming." One of his lieutenants, a scruffy-looking being with multiple eyes, nodded eagerly. "Yes, my lord. They won't know what hit them. Their resources are ripe for the taking." Korath's eyes glinted with ambition as he waved his hand dismissively. "Enough talk. We shall make them regret their complacency. Earth will be ours, and their silence will be shattered by the sound of our conquest." Back on Earth, as Marisol concluded her presentation, A cold shiver ran down her spine. The hum faded, but an unsettling feeling lingered in the air. As the delegates began to disperse, she felt an inexplicable urgency to act. She stepped down from the podium, her mind racing with thoughts of the warning signs she had observed. It was then that her personal communicator buzzed insistently. With a frown, she glanced at the screen, recognizing Amir's name flashing across it. He was her best friend and a tech expert, brilliant with coding and data analysis. Marisol answered the call, her voice tinged with concern. "Amir, what's going on?" "Marisol, you need to see this," Amir replied, his tone urgent. "I've been analyzing the cosmic readings from your presentation, and there's something off. I've intercepted an unusual signal. It's coming from... well, I can't explain it over the comm. Meet me at the lab. On my way," she said, her heart racing with anticipation. She navigated through the crowded hall, her mind swirling with possibilities. What could Amir have discovered? Was it related to the ominous hum? Arriving at the lab, Marisol found Amir hunched over his workstation, fingers flying across the keyboard. The room was dimly lit, filled with the glow of monitors displaying streams of data. Amir looked up, his brow furrowed with worry. "I've decoded part of the signal. It's a warning, Marisol. Someone is watching Earth, someone powerful." Marisol's stomach dropped. "What do you mean? Are you sure?" "I'm certain. The message is encrypted, but I managed to glean some coordinates. It's coming from an area outside our solar system, close to the asteroid belt." He paused, his expression serious. "We need to investigate further. This could be the threat you warned them about." Marisol's mind raced with the implications. "But how do we approach this? We can't just launch a mission without backup." Amir nodded, his brow furrowing in concentration. "We don't have time to waste, Marisol. If Korath is indeed plotting something, we need to act quickly. I can help you decode the rest of the message, but we should also gather some equipment, something that can help us monitor the situation from a distance." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "All right, let's get to work. If we can uncover the truth behind this warning, we might be able to save Earth before it's too late." As Marisol and Amir delved into the encrypted message, an unshakable sense of urgency settled over them. They were on the brink of uncovering something monumental, and as Marisol glanced out the window at the tranquil skyline of the capital, she couldn't help but feel that the silence of Earth was about to be irrevocably broken. As the coordinates from the mysterious message flickered on Amir's screen, Marisol felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The abandoned space station, a relic from a bygone era of interstellar exploration, loomed large in her thoughts. She leaned closer to the monitor, the glow illuminating her resolute expression. "Are you sure about this?" Amir asked, adjusting his glasses nervously as he scrolled through the data. "This could be a trap." Marisol straightened up, her resolve hardening. "We have to take the risk, Amir. If there's even a chance that this leads to answers about the threats facing Earth, we can't ignore it. We've already seen the warnings, and Korath's ambitions can't be underestimated." Amir sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine, but we need to be careful. I'll prep the ship and gather supplies. Just promise me we won't go in unarmed." "Deal," Marisol said, a spark of determination igniting in her chest. The next day, they boarded their small, modified spacecraft. The ship hummed to life, its engines purring in anticipation of the journey ahead. Marisol took the pilot's seat, her fingers dancing over the controls as she plotted the course to the coordinates. A sense of purpose enveloped her. They were not just scientists anymore, but explorers on the brink of uncovering a hidden truth. As they propelled through the cosmos, the silence of space surrounded them. Stars twinkled like distant memories, and the vastness felt both daunting and exhilarating. After hours of travel, the abandoned space station came into view, its structure weathered and battered, drifting silently on the fringes of the solar system. "Looks like no one's been here in ages," Amir remarked, peering through the viewport. "We might find some interesting tech inside. Or it could just be a graveyard of old experiments. Let's hope for the former, Marisol replied, steeling herself for what lay ahead. They docked the ship at the station's airlock, the metallic clank echoing eerily in the silence. Marisol and Amir suited up, their breaths muffled by the oxygen mask. As they entered the station, a shiver ran down Marisol's spine. The low hum of machinery filled the air, but the flickering lights cast long shadows, creating an unsettling atmosphere. "Stay close," Marisol instructed, her eyes scanning the dimly lit corridor ahead. They stepped cautiously into the main chamber, where remnants of advanced technology lay scattered about. Broken consoles, discarded tools, and strange devices whose purposes had long been forgotten. In the center of the room, a large screen flickered to life, revealing a series of energy readings that fluctuated wildly. "Look at this!" Amir exclaimed, pointing at the screen. "These energy patterns, they're off the charts! It's like something was here, something powerful!" Marisol knelt beside a terminal, brushing away layers of dust to reveal a control panel. Her heart raced as she began to access the data stored within. This lab must have been conducting some kind of cosmic experiment. If we can decode this, it might explain why Earth has been a target. Amir joined her, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "I'm pulling up the logs. If anyone made a record of what happened here, it's got to be in these files." Minutes turned into an eternity as they sifted through the data, the tension mounting with each passing second. Suddenly, Marisol's eyes widened in disbelief. "Amir, look at this. It says here that Earth is at the center of a vast network of energy, a cosmic nexus. They were studying its potential for weaponization." "What?" Amir's voice was barely above a whisper. "Weaponization. Why would anyone want to use Earth's energy like that?" Marisol's thoughts raced. If Korath is aware of this, he might see Earth as the key to his ambitions. We need to get this information back to the Council. They must understand the gravity of the situation. Just as she finished speaking, the lights flickered violently, and a red alarm blared throughout the station. The sound reverberated in their ears, sending a jolt of panic through Marisol's body. "Someone's here!" Amir shouted, his eyes wide with fear. Before they could react, the heavy door they had entered through slid open with a metallic groan, revealing a group of armed figures clad in dark uniforms. The insignia on their shoulders was unmistakable: Korath's agents. "Step away from the console," one of them commanded, his voice chillingly calm. "You're trespassing on private property." Marisol and Amir exchanged a quick glance, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They were outnumbered, but there was no time to think. "Run!" Marisol yelled, darting toward a side corridor as the agents opened fire. The air crackled with energy blasts, narrowly missing them as they sprinted through the labyrinthine hallways of the station. "Where do we go?" Amir gasped, his breath heavy as they turned a corner. "Just keep moving," Marisol shouted, her mind racing. "We need to find a way back to the ship." They dashed through the winding corridors, the sound of footsteps echoing behind them. Marisol's heart pounded in her chest as they weaved through the maze of rooms, desperately searching for an exit. Suddenly, they stumbled into a large chamber filled with complex machinery and flickering screens. The agents were hot on their heels, and they had no choice but to hide behind a massive console. "What do we do now?" Amir whispered, his eyes darting around the room. Marisol's mind was racing. "We have to disable their tracking system. If we can create a diversion, we might buy ourselves some time." She spotted a control panel at the far end of the room, just out of reach. "I'll need you to cover me while I try to access that terminal." Amir nodded, his expression tense. "Just be quick about it." As Marisol dashed towards the panel, she could hear the agents approaching. She quickly tapped into the system, her fingers moving deftly over the keys. Come on," she muttered under her breath. The screen flickered, displaying a series of codes and commands. She focused, praying for the right sequence. "Marisol!" Amir called out, his voice strained. "They're coming!" With a final keystroke, the alarm blared louder, and the lights shifted to an ominous red. "Got it! I've triggered a lockdown in this section." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed as the agents paused, confusion evident in their voices. "What's happening?" "Secure the area!" Marisol raced back to Amir, relief flooding her as they regrouped. "Let's go! We have a chance!" They sprinted back through the corridors, the sounds of chaos echoing behind them. As they neared the airlock, they could see their ship glowing faintly in the distance. Hope surged within Marisol as they reached the docking bay. "Almost there!" Amir shouted, his voice filled with exhilaration. Just as they reached the ship, a blast of energy struck the wall beside them, sending debris flying. They dove into the ship, slamming the hatch shut behind them. "Get us out of here!" Marisol yelled, her fingers flying over the controls as she initiated the launch sequence. With a jolt, the engines roared to life. They propelled into space, leaving the abandoned station behind. As they broke free from the gravitational pull, Marisol exhaled deeply, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "We made it," Amir said, his voice trembling with relief. But as they navigated back toward Earth, the weight of their discovery settled heavily on Marisol's shoulders. The truth they had uncovered was only the beginning, and she knew they would have to face Korath's looming threat sooner than they had anticipated. Marisol and Amir emerged from the shadowy corridors of the abandoned space station, their hearts racing and minds reeling. The data they had managed to download was crucial, yet the weight of their discovery threatened to crush them. As they stepped back onto the surface of Earth, the familiar skyline of their city greeted them. But there was an unsettling tension in the air, as if the very atmosphere had shifted in response to their findings. "Did you see the look on their faces?" Amir chuckled nervously, trying to lighten the mood as they made their way to Marisol's lab. "I thought we were going to become cosmic dust right there." Marisol shook her head, her brow furrowed. "This isn't a joke, Amir. We're not safe yet. If Korath's agents found us, they'll be looking for us now. We need to figure out how to warn everyone about what's coming." As they entered the lab, the chaos in the streets outside became palpable. Marisol could hear snippets of conversations through the windows, people discussing strange sightings in the sky, whispers of an invasion, and the unsettling feeling that something was indeed amiss. She turned to Amir, who was already typing furiously on his terminal, his fingers flying over the keys. "Let's analyze this data. We need to know what we're dealing with," Marisol urged, her voice urgent. Amir nodded, his face set in determination. "Right, but we should also think about how we're going to present this to the council. They won't just take our word for it." "Are you kidding?" Marisol scoffed. "They'll probably dismiss us as alarmists. We need solid proof, something that can't be ignored. The data we gathered. It has to show something concrete about Korath's plans." Hours passed as they delved deep into the files, piecing together a fragmented picture of Korath's intentions. The array of information was disturbing. A network of surveillance, a blueprint for an impending attack, and a chilling revelation of Earth's role in a cosmic experiment designed to harness its resources. "Here!" Amir exclaimed, pointing at the screen. "These readings suggest they've been monitoring our energy levels for months. They're preparing to strike during the planetary alignment. It's all laid out here." Marisol's heart raced. "We have to get this to the leaders. They need to see the evidence. If they don't act, we'll be sitting ducks." As night fell, Marisol and Amir made their way to the council's headquarters, the imposing structure looming like a fortress against the starry sky. The streets, once buzzing with life, were now eerily quiet, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Citizens were locked indoors, listening to the news reports that only added to their anxiety. Upon arrival, they were met with skepticism from the guard. "The council is in session," one of them said dismissively. "Unless you have an appointment, you can't get in." Marisol stepped forward, her voice steady despite the nerves swirling in her stomach. "We have vital information regarding a threat to Earth. It's urgent." The guard raised an eyebrow but seemed unconvinced. "Urgent, huh?" Everyone thinks their news is urgent these days. He turned to his counterpart, who shrugged. Let us through, Amir chimed in, frustration seeping into his tone. We just escaped with our lives. If you don't let us in, it may be your lives on the line next. After a tense moment, the guard relented and led them through the austere hallways. The council chamber was filled with representatives from various sectors of Earth, their voices a cacophony of heated discussions. Marisol felt her stomach twist as she stepped into the room, the weight of her mission pressing heavily on her shoulders. Council members, she started, clearing her throat to capture their attention. Thank you for allowing us to speak. We have critical information regarding Korath's impending attack. A murmur swept through the room, and several council members exchanged skeptical glances. Korath? One of the older members, a stoic man with graying hair, interjected, We've heard rumors, but nothing concrete. We cannot act on conjecture, Marisol pressed on, determination flaring within her. It's not conjecture. We found data at the abandoned space station. Information that shows Korath has been planning this for months. He's been monitoring us, and he intends to strike during the planetary alignment. We need to prepare. The room erupted into a chorus of voices, some supporting Marisol while others dismissed her claims as paranoia. This is outrageous. We cannot let fear dictate our actions, another council member shouted, his face flushed with indignation. Fear, Marisol shot back, her voice rising above the chaos. You call this fear. This is awareness. If we don't act now, we will face devastation. Silence has its place, but it cannot protect us from the threats that lurk in the shadows. The council's leader, a dignified woman with sharp features, raised her hand for silence. We will hear Marisol and Amir out. Please, continue. Marisol took a deep breath, steeling herself. The data we retrieved indicates that Korath is not only targeting Earth's resources, but also views our reputation as a peaceful planet as a weakness to exploit. We cannot afford to be complacent any longer. Amir stepped forward, his eyes scanning the faces of the council members. What we found suggests that Korath believes he can conquer Earth without a fight. He sees us as an easy target. If we do not rally our defenses, we will pay the price for our silence. The council remained divided, some nodding in agreement while others shook their heads, unwilling to accept the urgency of the situation. The leader sighed, her expression thoughtful yet troubled. Your findings are alarming, but we must consider the ramifications of declaring war. We have always prided ourselves on our peaceful existence. Peace will not save us, Marisol interjected, desperation creeping into her voice. We cannot wait until it's too late. We have to prepare for the worst. At the very least, we should mobilize our defenses. A heated debate ensued, voices clashing like thunder. Marisol's heart raced as she glanced at Amir, who looked equally frustrated. It was becoming clear that the council was not ready to heed their warning, and time was slipping away. As the meeting dragged on, Marisol's resolve hardened. She knew that if she wanted to protect her home, she would have to take matters into her own hands. As the council continued to argue, she leaned closer to Amir, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to reach out to those who will listen. The rebel factions, those who have been wary of the government's complacency, they'll understand the gravity of what's happening. Amir's eyes widened. You mean the groups we've heard about? The ones labeled as extremists? They're not extremists. They're survivors, Marisol replied fiercely. They know the dangers that come with silence. If we can unite with them, maybe we can prepare for what's coming. As the council's arguments raged on, Marisol made up her mind. She would seek out the rebels, form an alliance, and prepare Earth for the impending storm. With each passing moment, the urgency of their situation crystallized in her mind. Standing on the brink of chaos, she knew that the fate of her planet rested in her hands, and she was willing to fight for it. As the stars began to align, a heavy weight settled in the air around the secret training facility that Marisol and her allies had established. The members of the alliance, A ragtag group of scientists, engineers, and former soldiers were all working tirelessly to enhance their technology and strategize their defense against Korath's looming attack. Marisol paced the dimly lit room, her mind racing through the fragments of data they had salvaged from the abandoned space station. The clock was ticking, and she could feel the pressure mounting. Amir sat at a cluttered workstation, surrounded by holographic displays that flickered with information. His fingers danced over the controls as he sifted through the codes they had decrypted, searching for any additional insights into Korath's plans. The tension between the Alliance members was palpable. Everyone felt the weight of what was coming, and it manifested itself in hushed conversations and furtive glances. Marisol, Amir called out, his voice breaking the silence. I found something. Look at this. He pulled up a schematic on the main screen, revealing a complex model of Korath's flagship. If we can modify our technology to match this design, we might be able to take down their shields during the planetary alignment. Marisol leaned closer, her brow furrowed in concentration. The hologram displayed intricate details. The flagship was equipped with a multi-layered energy shield that was designed to absorb and redirect incoming attacks. This is brilliant, Amir, but we'll need more than just a good plan. We need to ensure that everyone understands their roles, she replied, a sense of urgency creeping into her tone. Just then, a voice piped up from the back of the room. It was Jax, a former military strategist who had joined their cause. We can't rely solely on technology. We need to be unpredictable. Korath will expect us to attack head-on. What if we create diversions? His eyes sparkled with a dangerous excitement. We could split our forces. Some of us can engage his fleet, while others aim for the flagship itself. Marisol nodded slowly, considering the implications. It's risky, but it might just work. We'll need to communicate flawlessly. If one group falters, the others will be left exposed. She turned to the group, her voice steady and commanding. We all know what's at stake. This isn't just about saving Earth. It's about standing against tyranny. We have to fight smart and fight together. The Alliance members exchanged determined looks, their resolve strengthening in the face of the impending battle. But even as they prepared for war, Marisol felt the gnawing fear that they might not be ready. She couldn't shake the feeling that Korath had something up his sleeve, something they hadn't yet uncovered. As the days passed, the atmosphere grew ever more electric. The alignment was just hours away, and the Alliance members were on high alert. Tensions further escalated when Amir stumbled upon a shocking discovery. He was examining the encrypted messages from their surveillance of Korath's forces when he noticed discrepancies in the communications between some members of their own alliance. Marisol! Amir shouted, his voice filled with urgency as he rushed over to her. You need to see this. He gestured for her to follow him to a secluded corner of the training area. There, he pulled up a series of messages that he had decrypted. These don't add up. Some of the members are sending private communications that are completely unrelated to our plans. It looks like they might be leaking information. Marisol's heart sank. Who? She demanded, her voice low and tense. We can't afford any leaks right now. Amir shook his head. It's hard to tell. The messages are coded, but it appears that a faction within our own ranks is either working for Korath or is too scared to trust us fully. We have to confront them before the alignment. Marisol took a deep breath, her mind racing with the implications. We need to call a meeting. We can't let this sow distrust among us. If we don't address this now, we'll be fighting each other instead of Korath. As the Alliance members gathered, Marisol felt the weight of leadership pressing down on her shoulders. She stood in front of them, her heart pounding. I've called this meeting because we need to address an issue that threatens our unity. There are indications that some of us may not be fully committed to our cause, she began, her voice steady but filled with urgency. A murmur of concern rippled through the crowd. What do you mean? Jax asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. I mean that there are communications among our ranks that suggest some of us may be leaking information to Korath or acting with ulterior motives. Marisol's gaze swept across the room, searching for signs of guilt or betrayal. This is a time for transparency. We need to trust each other completely if we are to succeed. The atmosphere thickened with suspicion, and Marisol could see the discomfort etched on the faces of her allies. One of the engineers, a young woman named Lila, spoke up. I've been with you all from the beginning. How can we be sure that this isn't some trick? What if it's you who can't be trusted? Lila, Amir interjected sharply. This isn't the time for accusations. We need to work together, not tear each other apart. Marisol held up her hand, silencing the growing tension. We can't afford to let fear control us. I propose we conduct a full review of our communications and activities. We need to root out any potential threats before it's too late. Reluctantly, the assembly agreed to the review, but the air of mistrust lingered. As they broke up, Marisol felt a deep sense of unease. She knew that unity was paramount, but the cracks were beginning to show, and the clock was ticking down to the alignment. Later that evening, as the sun set and the stars began to twinkle overhead, Marisol found herself on the rooftop of the training facility. She gazed up at the celestial display, her thoughts swirling. Would they be ready for Korath? Would their preparations be enough? Hey! Amir joined her, leaning against the railing. You okay? Marisol turned to him, forcing a smile, just thinking about what's to come. We're so close, yet it feels like everything could fall apart at any moment. Amir crossed his arms, his expression serious. We've trained hard, Marisol. We've uncovered truths that nobody else dared to. Trust in our strength. Trust in each other. She nodded, grateful for his support, but doubt still gnawed at her. What if we're not strong enough? What if that faction within us undermines everything? Amir met her gaze, his eyes fierce. Then we adapt. We find a way to turn even that against Korath. We're not alone in this. We have each other. Marisol felt a flicker of hope at his words, but just as quickly, it was overshadowed by the impending threat. They had to act soon. As they stood together in the fading light, the tranquility of the night was a deceptive mask for the chaos that loomed ahead. The countdown to the alignment had begun, and with it, the fate of Earth hung precariously in the balance, a fragile thread waiting to be tested. Marisol's heart raced as she maneuvered through the chaotic battlefield aboard Korath's flagship. The din of alarms blared around her, punctuated by the distant sounds of explosions and the cries of soldiers engaged in the fray. She could feel the oppressive weight of the cosmic energy building outside as the planetary alignment approached. Every passing moment was precious, and she had no intention of letting this opportunity slip away. Amir, she whispered fiercely to herself. The name almost a mantra. He needed her, and she had to find a way to save him. She recalled the plan they had devised together in the safety of their hideout, a bold strategy to infiltrate the flagship and locate the weapon capable of harnessing the energy of the alignment. But now, with Amir captured, the stakes had multiplied 100-fold. As she crept through the ship's dimly lit corridors, her mind raced with the possibilities. The hidden weapon Korath had kept under wraps could be the key to turning the tide of the battle. If she could just reach it in time, she might be able to save Amir and, in doing so, save Earth. Marisol ducked into a cramped alcove as a pair of Korath's soldiers passed by, their heavy boots echoing ominously. She held her breath, her heart pounding in time with the countdown to the alignment. When the soldiers moved on, she slipped back into movement. The halls of the flagship were an intricate maze, designed to confuse and intimidate intruders. But Marisol was determined, her resolve steeled by the thought of Amir's safety. Focus, Marisol, she muttered under her breath, a reminder to herself to stay on task. She could almost hear Amir's voice, encouraging her, grounding her amidst the chaos. She had to find the weapon, and fast. Suddenly, a thought struck her. The command center. If she could access the mainframe, she might be able to locate the weapon's position and even unlock its control protocols. With renewed urgency, she altered her course, heading toward the center of the ship. As she approached the command center, she glanced around cautiously. The door was heavily guarded. Two soldiers stood at attention, their expressions unreadable beneath their helmets. Marisol's heart sank. There was no way she could take them on directly without risking everything. "Think! Think!" she urged herself, scanning the area for anything that could help. Then, she noticed a maintenance panel slightly ajar nearby. It was a long shot, but if she could sneak in through the service ducts, she might be able to bypass the guards entirely. Stealthily, she made her way to the opening and squeezed herself inside, the cold metal pressing against her as she crawled through the cramped space. The ducts twisted and turned, and Marisol relied on her sense of direction to guide her. After what felt like an eternity, she heard voices echoing from below. Peering through a grate, she spotted the command center, its screens flickering with images of the battle outside. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw Korath himself, his imposing figure commanding the room. "Prepare the weapon for activation," Korath's voice boomed, sending a shiver down her spine. "We will harness the energy of the alignment and crush any resistance once and for all." Marisol's hands clenched into fists. She had to act quickly. The momentary distraction of the guards had given her the opening she needed. With a swift movement, she unscrewed the grate and slipped down onto the floor, landing softly in the shadows. "Now or never," she whispered to herself, steeling her nerves. She approached the control panel, her fingers flying over the interface as she worked to access the system. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of impending doom lurking just outside. Just as she was about to unlock the weapon's location, she heard a commotion behind her. Turning, she saw Amir being dragged into the room by two soldiers, his hands bound and a defiant look on his face. "Marisol!" he shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "Get out of here! You have to!" "Amir!" she cried, torn between her mission and his safety. "I can't leave you!" Korath turned sharply, his piercing gaze locking onto her. Well, look who we have here," he sneered, a wicked smile spreading across his face. "The little scientist thinks she can save the day. How quaint." Marisol's heart raced as she weighed her options. The weapon was within reach, but Amir needed her too. "I can't let him suffer for my mission," she thought, her mind racing with possibilities. "Release him, Korath," she demanded, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "You have me. Let him go, and I'll cooperate." Korath chuckled darkly, his eyes glinting with malice. "You think you have any leverage here? You're mistaken. I'll enjoy watching you both perish when I unleash the power of the alignment." As he gestured for the soldiers to tighten their grip on Amir, Marisol felt a surge of desperation. She couldn't let this be the end. With a sudden burst of courage, she lunged for the control panel, her fingers dancing across the screens once more. "Marisol, no!" Amir shouted, his voice filled with panic. "I'm not leaving you!" she yelled back, her determination igniting. But Korath was quicker. He drew a weapon and pointed it at her, his expression twisted with rage. "You're making a grave mistake, girl." Before she could react, the door burst open, and a group of soldiers rushed in, their uniforms bearing the insignia of a rogue faction. They exchanged glances with Korath, their expressions a mix of defiance and urgency. "You've gone too far, Korath!" one of them shouted, stepping forward. "This tyranny ends now." Marisol's heart raced as the tide shifted in the room. Korath's face darkened with fury. "You traitors dare to defy me! You will regret this!" Amidst the chaos, Marisol saw her chance. "Amir, come on!" she shouted, urging him to move as the soldiers engaged Korath's men in a fierce battle. "Get to the weapon!" Amir yelled back, determination igniting in his eyes. "I'll hold them off." "No, we can't split up." But as the clashes intensified, Marisol knew she had to make a choice. With a heavy heart, she nodded to Amir, trusting him to do what he could to buy her time. "I'll be back." I promise. With that, she turned and sprinted toward the control panel, her fingers flying over the interface as she initiated the weapon's activation sequence. The screens flickered with data as the countdown began, and she could feel the power surging around her, ready to be unleashed. As Korath's shouts echoed around her, Marisol knew that the outcome of this battle depended on her resolve. She could only hope that Amir would hold on long enough for her to complete their mission. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the galaxy, hung in the balance. As the dust settled from the shocking confrontation aboard Korath's flagship, Marisol and Amir found themselves in the dimly lit command center of the rogue faction. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Lyra, the defector who had aided their escape, paced back and forth, her brow furrowed in determination. The holographic display flickered, casting shadows on their faces, revealing a map of the impending battle zone. "We have to act quickly," Lyra said, her voice steady but urgent. "Korath will not take long to regroup. His forces are vast and merciless." Marisol nodded, her thoughts racing. "What's the plan?" she asked, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and adrenaline. The stakes had never been higher, and the weight of Earth's fate rested heavily on her shoulders. Lyra stopped pacing and turned to face them. "Korath has been using a device that siphons energy from the planetary alignment to amplify his own abilities. If we can infiltrate his command ship again, we can reverse the flow of that energy and redirect it back to Earth's defenses." Amir leaned closer to the holographic map, his fingers dancing over the controls to zoom in on the flagship's location. "But how do we get there?" "The ship is well protected, and Korath will be on high alert after our last encounter." "We'll use the element of surprise," Lyra replied. "We've managed to gather a small fleet of ships that can cloak themselves. We'll approach from the dark side of the moon, where Korath's sensors are weakest. Once we're close enough, we'll deploy a small team to board the flagship." Marisol exchanged glances with Amir, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "If we can turn the weapon against him, we might stand a chance," she said, her resolve hardening. "Exactly," Lyra affirmed, her eyes shining with determination. "But we need to be ready for anything. Korath won't hesitate to unleash his power if he senses we're a threat." As they finalized their plan, Marisol felt a surge of energy coursing through her. This was the moment they had been preparing for, a chance to reclaim their planet's destiny. She gathered the rebels, explaining the mission in detail, her voice steady and inspiring. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for every inhabitant of Earth," she declared. "Korath's tyranny ends today." The rebels erupted in cheers, their spirits lifted by Marisol's words. They strapped themselves into their ships, the hum of engines filling the air as they launched into the void of space, headed for the dark side of the moon. The journey felt surreal. As the familiar blue and green orb of Earth faded into the distance, Marisol couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The galaxy had long viewed Earth as a quiet planet, a place of peace. But now, it felt as if that very silence was a prelude to chaos. Once they reached the moon, they cloaked their ships, slipping into the shadows. Marisol's heart raced as they neared Korath's flagship, a massive structure looming in the void, dark and imposing. She could see the ship's defenses bristling with energy, and she knew they were going to face a formidable opponent. "Remember, we need to keep quiet," Amir whispered, his eyes scanning the control panel. "Once we breach the ship, we'll need to split up to find the energy core. We can't let Korath know we're here until it's too late." Marisol nodded, her grip tightening around the control yoke. "Let's do this." With a deep breath, they activated their cloaking devices and approached the flagship's hangar bay. The doors slid open, revealing a dark, cavernous space. They maneuvered their ships inside and quickly powered down, slipping into the shadows. As they disembarked, Marisol felt the weight of her decision settle in her gut. There was no turning back now. They moved stealthily through the ship's corridors, their footsteps silent against the metal floors. The atmosphere was charged with tension, the air thick and oppressive. "Over there," Lyra whispered, pointing to a series of doors marked with warning symbols. "That's where they keep the energy core. We need to breach it without setting off alarms." Amir pulled out a small device from his pack. "I can override the security systems, but I'll need a few minutes. Keep watch." Marisol and Lyra took positions near the entrance, their breaths shallow as they listened for any signs of Korath's guards. Time seemed to stretch as Amir worked his magic, his fingers flying over the device. "Just a little longer," he muttered, his brow furrowed with concentration. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed down the corridor, and Marisol's heart dropped. "We're not alone," she hissed, her instincts kicking in. "Get ready," Lyra commanded, pulling out her weapon. Amir's device beeped, and with a final flourish, he grinned. "Got it!" The door slid open, and they rushed inside, slamming it shut just as footsteps approached. Inside, the chamber was filled with pulsating energy, the core glowing ominously at its center. "This is it," Lyra said, her eyes wide with awe. "We can reverse the energy flow from here." Marisol approached the core, feeling its power radiating through the air. "Let's set up the device. We need to be quick." As they worked together, connecting wires and aligning circuits, Marisol felt a sense of unity with her team. They were no longer just individuals fighting for survival. They were a collective force, each contributing to a greater cause. But just as they finished, alarms blared throughout the ship, red lights flashing ominously. "We've been compromised!" Amir shouted, scrambling for cover. "Finish the setup! I'll hold them off!" Lyra yelled, her voice filled with determination. "No! We can't split up!" Marisol protested, panic rising within her. "Just do it!" Lyra insisted, her eyes fierce. "I won't let Korath take this from us!" With a heavy heart, Marisol nodded, knowing they had no choice. She and Amir activated the device, feeling the energy surge around them. The core hummed louder, responding to their commands. "Now, redirect the flow!" Marisol shouted, adrenaline pumping through her veins. As they worked frantically, the door burst open, and Korath's guards flooded in, weapons drawn. "You fools!" Korath's voice boomed as he appeared behind them, a dark presence radiating power. "You think you can turn my weapon against me?" Marisol's heart raced as she faced him, the embodiment of their fears. "We're not afraid of you, Korath. This ends now," Korath laughed. But it was a chilling sound devoid of humor. "You misunderstand, Earthlings. Your quiet status has lulled you into complacency. You're nothing but pawns in a much larger game." With a wave of his hand, energy crackled around him, and he unleashed a powerful blast toward them. Marisol and Amir barely managed to dodge, the energy scorching the ground where they had just stood. "Amir, adjust the output!" Marisol yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to harness this energy!" As Amir worked desperately at the controls, Marisol felt a surge of defiance. They would not be silenced any longer. She focused, channeling her determination into the device, urging the core to respond. Korath advanced, his face twisted in rage. "You think you can harness the silence of Earth? It is a curse, not a blessing." But Marisol realized the truth. Earth's silence had been a facade, a way to keep them isolated and vulnerable. And now, they would turn that silence into a weapon. "You're wrong, Korath. Silence is strength," she shouted, her voice ringing with conviction. With a final push, the device flared to life, redirecting the energy from the core back toward Korath. The blast hit him with full force, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze as the energy enveloped him. "No!" he screamed, his voice filled with rage and disbelief. In that instant, Marisol felt the shift in the air, the power of unity and resilience radiating from her allies. Earth's peaceful reputation was no longer a weakness. It had become their greatest strength. As the energy dissipated, Korath fell to his knees, defeated. The guards hesitated, uncertain, their loyalty wavering. "Join us," Lyra shouted, her weapon still drawn. "You have a choice." One by one, the guards lowered their weapons, and the tide turned. Marisol looked around at her allies, their faces illuminated by the energy of victory. They had done it. They had transformed their silence into a rallying cry for freedom. As the flagship began to destabilize, Marisol turned to her friends. "We need to evacuate. Now!" They raced out of the chamber, hearts pounding, the sound of chaos echoing behind them. The ship was crumbling, and they needed to make it to their ships before it was too late. As they burst into the hangar bay and boarded their cloaked ships, Marisol glanced back at the flagship, a sense of bittersweet triumph swelling in her chest. They had changed the course of their fate, but the journey was far from over. Once they were safely away from the destruction, Marisol felt a sense of release wash over her. They had awakened a power within themselves and their planet that had long been